FBI has released its report on its May 28, 2004 interview with Vice President Dick Cheney about his role in the leak of Valerie Plame's identity as a CIA operative after her husband had challenged the Bush-Cheney lie about Iraqi WMD. And on our third story tonight, Cheney's response to the FBI in sum. Valerie Plame who now? Joining the FBI interviewing Cheney at the White House office was prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald, who would later declare that, quote, there is a cloud over the vice president. Cheney's chief of staff, Scooter Libby, was convicted of perjury and obstruction of justice for having blocked Fitzgerald from discovering Cheney's full role. According to the Associated Press, we know that now at least 72 times during Cheney's one interview with the FBI, he declined to answer, or far more often said he could not recall the answer, could not recall telling Libby Plame's identity. Libby reminding him of this fact later on, or that Libby had leaked Plame's name to reporters. Did remember that he wanted spokesman Scott McClellan to tell reporters Libby had not leaked Plame's name. He admitted he learned Plame's name well before Libby from CIA Director George Tenet. In a section on the people with whom Cheney discussed Plame, two lines are redacted. The blog Firedog Lake correlates the lines to a Justice Department filing claiming privilege, quote, because they summarize a confidential conversation between the vice president and the president. Mr. McClellan says in his book that Cheney's lawyer, who was at the FBI interview, later leaked to reporters that the president had declassified select information about Iraq. But when Cheney was asked about this declassification by the FBI, he claimed executive privilege. Let's turn now to the White House counsel under President Nixon, John Dean, now columnist at FindLaw.com and author of Blind Ambition, Worse Than Watergate, Broken Government, and more. Welcome back, John.
Hi, Keith.
Is this perjury? Is this obstruction? And if it's either, how come there are no charges?
Well, the key element of perjury, of course, is being under oath. There's no indication in the notes of the interview that this was a sworn testimony. There's a lot of evidence that he gave a number of false statements to federal officials, which is clearly a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. 1001, the false statement statute, and it could well be an obstruction of justice. So it's not clear why Fitzgerald did not aggressively pursue this. This, Keith, is something of a record. If you'll recall, former Chief of Staff Bob Haldeman did 150 I don't recalls during his 3 days before the Senate Watergate Committee. This is 72 in less than 3 hours. That's right up there.
Well, he's got that going for him at least. Does the whole thing, particularly the number of apparent false statements to federal authorities, explain why the vice president pushed so hard for a pardon for Mr. Libby?
Well, this, to me, is one of the best explanations of what did happen, why Cheney pushed his relationship with Bush, if not to the breaking point, very close to it, to try to get a pardon for Libby. He clearly, shows in this testimony, as well as in all his other actions, that Libby fell on the sword for his boss. His boss obviously felt an obligation and wanted to maintain that relationship of confidentiality, if you will. And I think he, by pushing it to the bitter end, certainly did that. He left a record to Libby that he did his best anyway, even though he didn't succeed.
One thing here makes no sense to me at all. Perhaps you can explain this. Firedog Lake, the website, pointed this out, that Cheney and his lawyer claimed executive privilege about the national intelligence estimate when Mr. Fitzgerald asked them about that. But the lawyer later leaked the answer to the media anyway. What does that mean? What does that say?
Well, it says several things. Obviously, it shows that top-secret classifications in the eyes of the beholder, and when you have a witness who is your client and he's just testified and he's the vice president and can give this information to you to help bolster that testimony, not to mention to help make the case for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, you leak it, just as they did, and it worked effectively.
Cheney began in this interview with the FBI by saying that talk show appearances were the extent of his interaction with journalists, and then he refused to sign confidentiality waivers. Is that 2 + 2 = fill in the blank?
Well, I think that's a different kind of math, maybe differential equations. We have a situation here where clearly Cheney said throughout his testimony that he hadn't talked to any journalist whatsoever. It makes no sense that he wouldn't sign a waiver immediately. Why he had to talk to his lawyer makes no sense at all. So either it means that he was concerned that in fact he had given an interview with more than one who would impeach his own testimony, or it means that it shows his utter disdain for the process if he's not in charge.
Lastly, John, in terms of this process, in sum, what have we learned because the FBI released these notes?
Well, we certainly have learned a lot about Cheney's personality and character and style. We've learned he's very effective at dissembling. He has now gotten himself beyond the statute of limitations. These are no threat to him whatsoever now that they have been released. And there are a lot of little things down in the weeds of these revelations that I think people like Firedog Lake, which have done great digging, will find further information in these things that will be revelatory. So we have more to learn, I think, from this rather powerful interview.
John Dean, author of Worse Than Watergate, Broken Government, and Conservatives Without Conscience, and one of the experts on the subject of remembering stuff that we have available to us. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Keith.